Welcome to this class. In this session, we will study the characterization, narrative techniques, themes of heroism, and also the description of major characters in continuation of Part 1, The Old Man and the Sea. Hemingway is well known for his prose style. In Part 1, we have seen reflections of his best work. His writings not only found his way to his trauma, which had severely wounded throughout his life, and also had an impact on modern day writings. Hemingway was a writer who always relied heavily on autobiographical sources. Hemingway was a writer who wrote on bullfighting, published short stories and articles, covered the Spanish Civil War as a journalist, and also published his best-selling novel, For Whom the Bell Tolls. These pieces helped Hemingway build up the mythic breed of masculinity for which he wished to be known. His work and his life revolved around big game hunting, fishing, boxing, and bullfighting, endeavors that he tried to master as seriously as he did writing. In the 1930s, Hemingway lived in Key West, Florida, and later in Cuba, and his years of experience fishing the Gulf Stream and Caribbean provided an essential background for the vivid descriptions of the fisherman's craft in The Old Man and the Sea. In 1936, he wrote a piece for Esquire about a Cuban fisherman who was dragged out to sea by the great marlin, a game fish that typically weighs hundreds of pounds. Sharks had destroyed the fisherman's catch by the time he was found half delirious by other fishermen. This story seems an obvious seed for the tale of Santiago in The Old Man and the Sea. Santiago's venture in many ways is the theme of the novel. Santiago is the best example of Hemingway's principles of honor. Santiago faces all his trials perfectly, honorably, with great courage and endurance, even when sharks attack the giant fish. He rises to such a stature that victory or loss no longer makes any difference. He shows that even when a man becomes old or unfortunate, he can still dare to persist and achieve victory, even while losing. He remains the proud victor, showing that man can be destroyed but not defeated. Through Santiago, Hemingway creates awareness among his readers that resilience is the most important value in life. Hemingway calls his heroes as code heroes, which are exemplars of his principles of honor, courage, and endurance. The giant marlin is sympathetic for the old man. It develops a certain liking for him, and the sharks which almost destroy the marlin are villains whom he detests. The old man is not only alone physically, but also cut off from relationships, love, brotherhood, friendship, hope, and such relationships which sustain human beings. The old man struggles with the seas, death, time, and nature. He possesses a singular purity of will and emotion. It is his solitude which requires absolute courage and complete self-reliance. Santiago's ideal can be generalized as spirit is endless, losing is inevitable, and suffering is optional. Never to give up is the central concept in the novel. Let's look at what Madeleine is. The boy Madeleine first accompanied Santiago on his fishing trips, but later moved to another ship. The old man was left all alone, but the boy's devotion to the old man is deep and genuine even after he leaves him. The boy brings him sardines every day to serve as baits. He attends on him not like a pupil but like a son. It is impossible to question the spiritual kinship between the old man and the boy. The boy inherits the knowledge of the old man. The old man looks upon him as a source of inspiration, and it is the boy who keeps him alive. Hemingway pairs up two contrasting extreme poles of man's life, that is, youth and old age. The boy is important to the old man because he believes in him and the old man believes in himself, despite the fact that all consider him to be unlucky. The boy is almost a disciple of the great hero Santiago. Santiago responds to the boy readily even in his old age, showing that he is youthful at heart. And that's why the boy encourages him in his struggle. The Old Man and the Sea uses the third person narrative. Readers are taken into the world of author heroes, which indicates that the author himself is now within their worlds because he can be one with these heroes. This technique proves more effective than any other narration, and the tone deepens as we move ahead in the story. Hemingway was cited for a forceful style, making mastery of the modern narration. He established the well-known clipped staccato rhythm that has been effectively used in our times. He avoids use of adjectives and adverbs, and his language abounds in nouns and verbs. In fact, he also avoids highly colored verbs and even metaphorical verbs. His style evokes pictures of emotion and a stark reality. The sentences are short and declarative. He uses only necessary links and details to his story, making it more meaningful. His prose can be characterized by simplicity of diction and sentence structure. The effect is crispness, clarity, cleanness, and care. His writings are straightforward and direct. His imagery is rich and earthy. Every line is perfect in Hemingway's writing, like that of great artists. The language underlying symbolic meanings and subjects belong to human thought and belief. The first and the final thing you have to do in this world, he said, is to last in it and not to be smashed by it. And it is the same way with your work. Hemingway wrote every major book on this principle. This is at once a rule for the conduct of life and a rule for the conduct of art. The Old Man and the Sea illustrates this determination. Of his own style, Hemingway says, I do most of my work in my head. I never begin to write until my ideas are in order. Frequently, I recite passages, dialogues as it is written. The ear is a good censor. I never set down a sentence on paper until I have it so expressed that it will be clear to anyone. The novel begins on a sad note of man fishing alone for 84 days without taking a fish. Earlier, he was accompanied by a boy, but afterwards he was moved to another ship because of his parents' decision. All consider him to be Salau. The whole story revolves around these two persons. Deprived of an opportunity to accompany Santiago, the boy's devotion to the old man is deep and genuine, and he asserts his bond by bringing food and sardines to him. He takes care like a son. A reverence for life's struggle and for mankind seem to have descended as a divine gift on Hemingway. The significant part of the novel is Santiago's heroism in the battle. To be a hero means to dare more than other men, to expose oneself to great dangers all alone, and therefore to be more at risk of danger, death, and defeat. The agony of it cannot be shared or understood by others. It must be endured all alone, even when the hands feel chafed and bleeding. What is significant is that hero not only fights but also fights gallantly. Only such qualities exemplify heroism. Santiago roves far beyond the customary grounds of fishing. He reaches so far that he catches a great fish, and the fish is so powerful that it pulls his skiff even farther out from the shore that he cannot prevent the marlin being chewed into pieces by sharks. Santiago says, "I shouldn't have gone out so far, fish. Neither for you nor for me. I'm sorry, fish." Santiago's attitude towards the great marlin is noteworthy, even though he had caught it after a period of 84 days. "I love you and respect you very much, but I will kill you before this day ends," says the old man to the marlin. He calls the fish friend and brother. There is no one worthy of eating him from the manner of his behavior and his great dignity. The very desire of this creature's admiration provides additional strength to Santiago's weakening body. Killed and lashed to his boat, the marlin appears no less dignified. Indeed, the marlin reflects the very qualities Santiago himself possesses: nobility, greatness, glory, honor, and endurance. Soon, the marlin is maimed by sharks, which symbolize Santiago being ridiculed by other fishermen. Santiago is the model of transcendence that turned loss into gain, defeat into triumph, and even death into life. Hemingway says, "I tried to make a real old man, a real boy, and a real sea, and a real fish, and a real shark. But if I made them good and true enough, they would mean many things. a profound message flows out from the story of the novel. Hemingway's code hero in his novel, Santiago, conveys that while a man grew old and wholly down on his luck, he can still dare, stick to the rules, endure when he is defeated and thwarted, and thus, by the manner of his losing, there is a moral victory. The death of the marlin serves as a beautiful case in point, as the fish dies. It is not only transformed into something larger, but also charged with life. Then the fish came alive with his death in him. In Hemingway's conception of the natural world, beauty is deadly, age is strength, and death is the greatest instance of liveliness. On another level, the story can be read as an allegory entirely personal to its tutor, as an account of his own struggle, his own determination, and his literary ups and downs. In nature, the gravity of the experience and the inescapability of the loss are always bound together. Nature provides us with opportunities, and we should respond to them. Sometimes experience comes with a heavy price, but no matter what it is worth, like Santiago, returns only with a big bare skeleton and staggers up to his hill almost exhausted and dreaming of African lions. This is in fact that which tells us what happens when man's pride forces him beyond the boundaries of the rightful human place, where he was almost alone completely in himself than ever before. It suggests man's greatest potential that can be found in his return to the natural world from which he was driven away. At one point, Santiago embraces the great fish, thinking, "You are killing me, fish, but you have the right to, brother. Come on and kill me. I don't care who kills who." This realization speaks of the principle of nature, that everything kills everything else in some way. It shows that life and death go hand in hand. Death is inevitable, and the fact is that one has to depend on another for food in nature. Hemingway's fiction presents a world where men live successfully by employing their skills. In his world, mere survival is not enough. One has to rise above the masses and attain mastery over rules and rituals by which men are judged. Hemingway employs a number of symbols to reinforce his theme. Baseball, lions, and biblical imagery are among these symbols. Santiago is well acquainted with the game of baseball. He loves it and constantly talks of it. When he is not thinking about fishing, his mind turns to religion and baseball. Although Santiago tells himself that now there is no time to think about the game, still the game remains in his thoughts. The old man's hero worship of Joe DiMaggio, the great Yankee player of baseball, is significant. DiMaggio, like Santiago, was a champion, a master of his craft. In spite of pain of a bone spur, he plays well, and it is this image that Santiago draws inspiration from, and constantly tells himself to be confident and endure the pain and suffering. The lions which Santiago dreamed about are described by him in terms of Christ symbols. They suggest love, solidarity, and humility as opposed to individualism and pride. Santiago sustains the image of the pride of lions which he saw on an African beach as a boy. He loved lions as much as he loved the boy. Like the boy, the lions evoked strength and courage in him to endure and emerge victorious. These qualities are further emphasized by symbolic value as he carries his ship's mast cross-like up to his hill and lies exhausted with his hands wounded and asleep, face down with his arms out straight and the palms of his hands up. The cuts on the hands of the fisherman recall the crucifixion wounds of Jesus Christ. It can be said that though the novel begins on a sad note of Santiago's inability to catch a fish for 84 days, it ends on buoyant note. Hemingway employs a number of images that link Santiago with Christ, which turned loss into gain, defeat into triumph, and even death into life. Therefore, Hemingway also strikes a note that life in this world has to go on, whatever comes in the way. Now, the important characters. Santiago. He suffers terribly throughout The Old Man and the Sea. In the opening pages of the book, he has gone 84 days without catching a fish. He then endures a long and grueling struggle with the marlin only to see his trophy catch destroyed by sharks. Yet the destruction enables the old man to undergo a remarkable transformation. After all, Santiago is an old man whose physical existence is almost over, but the reader is assured that Santiago will persist through Madeleine, who, like a disciple, awaits the old man's teachings and will make use of those lessons long after his teacher had died. Thus, Santiago manages perhaps the most miraculous feat of all. He finds a way to prolong his life after death. Santiago's commitment also shows his determination to change his luck. Later, after the sharks have destroyed his prize marlin, Santiago chastises himself for his hubris, claiming that it has ruined both the marlin and himself. True as this might be, it is only half the picture, for Santiago's pride also enables him to achieve his most true and complete self. Furthermore, it helps him earn the deeper respect of the village fishermen and secures him the prized companionship of the boy, and he knows that he will never have to endure such an epic struggle again. Santiago's pride is what enables him to endure, and it is perhaps endurance that matters most in Hemingway's conception of the world, a world in which death and destruction as part of the natural order of things are unavoidable. Hemingway seems to believe that there are only two options: defeat or endurance until destruction. Like Christ, to whom Santiago is unashamedly compared at the end of the novella, the old man's physical suffering leads to a more significant spiritual triumph. Now about Madeleine. Madeleine is present only in the beginning and at the end of The Old Man and the Sea. But his presence is important because Madeleine's devotion to Santiago highlights Santiago's value as a person and as a fisherman. Madeleine demonstrates his love for Santiago openly. He makes sure that the old man has food, blankets, and can rest without being bothered. Despite Hemingway's insistence that his characters were a real old man and a real boy, Madeleine's purity and singleness of purpose elevate him to the level of a symbolic character. Madeleine's actions are not tainted by confusion, ambivalence, or willfulness that typify adolescence. Instead, he is a companion who feels nothing but love and devotion. Hemingway does hint at the boy's resentment for his father, who wishes Madeleine obeys by abandoning the old man after 40 days without catching a fish. This fact helps to establish the boy as a real human being, a person with conflicted loyalties who faces difficult decisions. By the end of the book, however, the boy abandons his duty to his father, swearing that he will sail with the old man regardless of the consequences. He stands in the novella's final pages as a symbol of uncompromised love and fidelity. He also represents the life that will follow from death. His dedication to learning from the old man ensures that Santiago will live on. I hope you have all enjoyed this session where we have seen part 2 of The Old Man and the Sea in continuation of part 1. Thank you.